this method, tree lengths which were stored at the trail are skidded to the forest road by a Clam-Bunk skidder. This is an articulated machine equipped with a crane featuring a grapple, which is a hydraulic loader, and with an inverted grapple which is mounted on the rear axle, from where the name of Clam-Bunk. Tree lengths are loaded into the clam, skidded, and stored alongside the forest road or onto landing. The method features a high productivity. The driver works from inside the cab, but the machine is very large, heavy, and expensive. Also, there is limited maneuverability of the loaded machine during driving or when loading. This method is used when cross-cutting should not be done before reaching the forest road or the customer, particularly when high extraction intensities in terms of volume are in place, such as clear cuts or wind throws. Time consumption, productivity, and costs depend largely on the payload volume and skidding distance. The typical work cycle includes the following elements. Driving to the loading site, also called empty turn, in which the machine is driven on the trail from the forest road to a place at which the tree lengths were pre-skidded. Loading the tree lengths. The crane is operated by the driver to pick up the tree lengths and to place them into the inverted grapple. This means that the crane is moved towards the tree lengths, the grapple of the crane is used to grab them, and then they are moved and placed into the inverted grapple, while the machine stays on the trail. At a given loading place, this is repeated until loading the wood from the range of the crane is completed. Driving between loading sites. If the wood loaded from the previous loading site is insufficient for a full load, then the worker drives the machine partly loaded to the next loading site where loading is repeated. Driving between loading sites and loading are repeated until the intended payload size is reached. Driving to the forest road, also called loaded turn, in which the machine is driven on the trail to extract the payload to the forest road. Unloading the tree lengths. Following the arrival at the forest road, the inverted grapple is opened and the crane is used to pick the tree lengths and to place them in bunches along the forest road or on a landing. Other tasks, which may not be cycle-wise, such as using the machine to bunch or rearrange the tree lengths at the roadside. This example comes from the Romanian operations where they have used a Clam-Bunk skidder to extract broadleaf tree lengths from a beech forest located in steep terrain. The trees were felled, pre-skidded with the same machine to the trail, and once here delimbed motor manually, leaving bunches of tree lengths and shorter wood originating from the tree limbs. Pre-skidding was done with a winch integrated into the machine. The machine is also characterized by a given flexibility in the sense that it can be equipped to work as a forwarder, an option that was used to extract shorter wood originating from the limbs. When operating on flat terrains and there is enough space at the trail to maneuver the machine, empty turn may be done by moving to the stand with the front part of the machine, which was not the case in this example. Once the machine arrives at the loading site, the grapple is opened by hydraulic steering, which is done from the cab. The two arms of the grapple can be operated individually so as to facilitate the loading of wood. Typically, the tree lengths are loaded with the butt oriented to the machine, leaving the smaller ends on the ground. When working with full trees, a similar procedure is used, with the difference that tree crowns will touch the ground. It is common for such machines to hold the end of the payload at a higher height above the ground, which helps reduce the friction during payload extraction. Loading is commonly aimed at forming and holding highly sized payloads which exceed the capabilities of other machines such as cable or grapple skidders. When loading tree lengths, the mass of the payloads can be higher as opposed to full trees. Depending on the capabilities of the crane and the mass of the tree lengths, loading can take more or less time. When loading wood of a considerable size, as in this example, the process runs at a much lower speed as the crane is often struggling to place the tree lengths into the clam. It is quite usual not to reach the intended size of the payload when loading the wood from a given site. In such cases, the machine needs to move partially loaded to the next loading site. To do so, the tree lengths are gripped into the clam, then the machine starts moving. Compared to a forwarder, this kind of machine has a limited or no capability to run backwards while partially loaded. Once arrived at a new loading place, the grapple is reopened and the loading resumes. Time consumption and productivity of loading depends on the size of the tree lengths and their grouping state. When the intended loading capacity is reached, the machine starts its loaded turn. Loaded turns as well as driving between loading places may be challenging when the trail has a limited width and curved portions. The maneuverability of long loads is less and the risk of damaging the trees located near the trail is high. Dragging the loads on the trail may cause rutting, particularly when skidding tree lengths. Payloads are typically of a high size but less maneuverable, therefore the speed during the loaded turn is small. At the forest road, the clam is opened, then the crane is used to unload the tree lengths. They are placed in bunches alongside the road or on a landing. Working with full trees runs similarly with the difference that the loads are of a lower mass. Skidding by a Clam-Bunk skidder may work well when coupled with feller bunchers or with harvesters. In the latter case, the trees are only felled and delimbed. Ultimately, the machine doesn't care how the trees are felled and processed, and it can work also combined with motor manual tree felling and processing work, as in this example. What is important is that the full trees or tree lengths are stored orderly alongside the trail.